Hi, welcome back to our channel. In this episode, we'll be talking about some of the most common mistakes Indian founders make and how can you avoid them. We have Mukesh Goyal, who's helped thousands of startups going through this maze. Let's dive right in. What's the top one mistake founders make while registering their company in India?
The one biggest mistake what we have seen founders make is choosing the wrong structure. So what we have seen is sometimes founders go for a particular structure because it might seem cheaper or it might seem quicker at that point of time, right? And sometimes they choose a structure because maybe one of their friends had suggested them doing that, but they don't understand the nuances of that particular structure, like in terms of what will be the tax compliances involved in that, or whether they will be able to raise funds, etc., using that particular structures. So this is the biggest mistake we have seen, and founders need to be very clear that okay, whatever structure they are using, choosing for company registration, that should be clearly in line with their long-term goals. That okay, this is where I want to be after certain X number of months, X number of years, whether I want to raise the funds or not. Basis that your structure should align with your goals. For example, let's say if you have plans to raise funds from the investors, right? Then a private limited is the best structure you can go for. But in case, let's say you are a solo founder right now and you are just testing the idea whether it will work or not, right? Then OPC might be the way for you. But if you see these different types of structures, whether it's OPC, LLP, or private limited, they have different pros as well as cons. When I say cons, in terms of cost and compliances, right? Like private limited, it might seem the best while raising funding, but in case your startup doesn't grow that much or you don't have that scalability, right? Then it involves a lot of costs for compliances. So please ensure that whenever you are registering a company, you are aware of all of these nuances and then choose the structure accordingly.
Okay, structure aside, what about ownership and shareholding? Where do founders usually go wrong here?
So we have seen a lot of founders making this mistake. What they do is they don't formalize the equity split earlier at the early stage of the startup, right? Sometimes they say we will figure it out later. Sometimes they do it 50-50 split just to keep it very fair, but right? But actually this split should be done basis on the roles, responsibilities, and the commitment level of each founder. So we have seen these mistakes happening, and sometimes they do the verbal agreement that okay, we're doing, let's say, 70-30 right now. Maybe later on when you don't have that thing written on the paper, sometimes these things bring a lot of legal trouble later on, and a lot of confusion also happens among the founders, right, later on. So that's a mistake they do. And one further thing, let's say if they have done some sort of agreement on the, let's say, split equity split among different founders, they don't decide the vesting schedule on that. So ideally that vesting period should also be clearly written on the paper, because sometimes, let's say, if one of the co-founders move out after, let's say, 6 months, then he or she may be moving out with a lot of equity shareholding, but that might not be fair for the startup, right? So ideally that vesting period should be clearly written on the paper, and all the founders should be on the same page on that. And while you're making these vesting agreements or finalizing the equity split, right, one other factor the founders should keep in mind is to leave some space for the future investors. Like in case you are planning to raise funds from other investors, right, you should have incorporated those requirements that might come in the future into your current cap table, so that later on you don't face any challenges or any issues due to this.
Okay, before we wrap up, if you had to give three quick tips to founders, what would that be?
Yeah, the first thing I think founders should do is start with clarity, right? You should be very clear that what are you building, what your business gonna look like, what are your long-term plans, and then choosing the structure accordingly. Let's say if you have plans to raise funds, then choose private limited. It might seem that okay, it does involve a lot of compliance costs as compared to other structures, but it will help you getting there where you want to reach, right? So in case you need professional help also for this, I'll suggest go for that if you feel like that, right? Second, have everything documented, I would say. Any agreements or any verbal agreements don't work out. So make sure that any equity split you have among different founders, right? Any vesting periods you have, any roles and responsibilities demarcation, everything should be clearly documented. Any NDS should be documented so that later on you don't face issues because of these things, right? So that will be my second advice. Last advice is to follow the compliance calendars, right? Once, so registration is one part, but in order to have your business running, right, year after year, you need to follow these compliances. You should be, as a founder, I don't like, it's not I want you to be legal experts or tax experts, right? But as a founder, because it's your business, in case anything goes south, it will impact you the most. So as a founder, you should be aware that, okay, what compliances you have to follow, what filings you have to done. In case your GST filings needs to be done or ITR needs to be done, any filing you have to done, like, right, different forms you have to file with the MCA. Let's say there is any change in your address of the company, you need to file relevant forms with the MCA within the timelines that have been decided by the MCA, right? So please ensure you are following all this so that these things don't slow you down and you focus more on your business and growing it.